welcome once again to the Dr. Zeero Xiron Free Magic Secrets Show, where we investigate all forms of magic. We talk about all kinds of things and stuff, such as occult commentary on the world today, occult commentary on what other people are saying on YouTube and other social media, all kinds of things and stuff. You know, it's kind of like the Wild West here of magic, where anything could happen and we could take the show anywhere. And, you know, I can't tell for sure, but I know I'm around the 600 episode mark. I mean, there's been way more stuff that I put out and deleted. So really, we probably passed 700 worth of videos a long time ago, but I kept deleting them and such. But I'm assuming this is around the 600 mark. And this is sort of the moment where every time Dr. Zeero picks up the recorder here to do a new episode, I'm always like struggling. I always think I've run out of ideas, but you never really run out of ideas because magic is infinite. But there's also this problem with there's tons of other occult commenters who have touched all kinds of subjects that have been done to death. And I try to avoid subjects that have been done to death. But there is one subject that has been done to death where often you don't really get some of the most important information. So I wanted to back this up a little bit and return to tarot because tarot is so essential. I feel that there's two major gateways to magic. Well, there's three. I'm going to say there's three major gateways, right? First is raw nature itself. The second is music. The third is tarot. I feel like these are the three strongest ways to push someone into magic. You can keep going with that list and keep adding new stuff on, but those three are tight. And there are certain aspects of the tarot that often get lost in translation. So before I even start, I wanted to direct your attention to the Wheel of Fortune and the World. And I'm looking at the Rider-Waite deck in front of me. Now, if you notice in these cards, in the top left, there will be a man. In the top right, there will be an eagle. In the bottom left, there will be a bull. And in the bottom right, there will be a lion. So what's going on with those specifically? So these are the basically cherubs, right? And they're called the cherubim, or Kerubim, the cherubim, but it's basically the cherubim. I guess it's just spelled a different way, but verbatim here. The cherubim are the living powers of the tetragrammaton on the material plane and presidents of the four elements. So literally, if you don't know, the tetragrammaton, you'll hear the name kicked around. It's the four-letter name of God when you transpose it to the elements. YHVH, which is fire, water, air, and earth. So the living powers of the four elements on the material plane. And these become the presidents of the four elements. God in control of the four elements. And God as a pansexual force. Is that right? Is that the right way to say it? Not pansexual, a pan force, just beyond the veil. You know, they look at God as like a oneness, absolute, male and female combined. You know, all the powers. But so the cherub of air is man, and that represents Aquarius apparently. The cherub of fire is the lion, and that's Leo. The cherub of earth is the bull, and that often represents Taurus. And the cherub of water is the eagle, and that is Scorpio. And they operate through the fixed or cherubic signs of the zodiac. So I wanted to talk about some other little things here. Number one, what do the Trumps really mean? And I know there's a lot of videos on that topic, but I'm going to give it to you straight as right to the point as I can, and I'll move on to that in a second. But we have to talk about how, the number 4 is the number of the tetragrammaton, right? So number 4 is repeated endlessly in the Tree of Life. Because the way we're talking about tarot now, if you didn't know, the Rider-Waite cards, the most famous tarot deck, that was created to do Kabbalistic tarot. And if you don't understand what that means, it's tarot as educational flashcards for the Tree of Life. If you don't know what the Tree of Life is, just Google that right now, and you'll find a diagram. And that's the diagram we're talking about. I'm assuming everybody that's tuning into the show has an idea what the Tree of Life is, because I talk about it an awful lot. If you don't, just look it up, return to the show, and then it'll make more sense. But you have the number 4 constantly repeating itself over and over in different directions. And a lot of the ways, I look at the Tree of Life, and it reminds me of the Lament configuration, which is the puzzle box from the Hellraiser movie series. You open it in a certain direction, heaven is unleashed. You move it in a second direction, you open the gates of hell. And the Tree of Life is almost like a bizarre accordion or Rubik's Cube or something like that, where you can keep unlocking it in different directions over and over and over and over. And over and over and over, and the number 4 pops up. So we have to talk about some things that people miss that I wanted to bring up. Now, when you do Kabbalistic tarot, you have the Tree of Life diagram in your face. Now, some people arrange it differently, but the way to think of it is that there's 4 worlds you'll keep hearing about. So basically, there's 4 of these trees layered on top of themselves. One way to visualize it is you have the 10 bubbles, and then you have the paths connecting the bubbles, right? So when you look at one of those bubbles, it's like a filing cabinet that you can pull out, and there's 4 departments, right? There's a material realm, or the physical realm, and then you have the angelic realm, the archangelic realm, and then you have like God's pure channel. And they have different names, and they have different functions. Okay, so a better way to visualize it is that you have one of these trees, and at the very bottom, the final bubble, number 10, represents Earth. That's called Malkut. And Malkut would be the Keter, which is number 1, right? It'd be the Malkut would be the Keter of the next tree. So basically imagine 4 of these trees linked in a row, where the 10th sphere is the number 1 of the next tree, and then it goes downwards, boom, 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 boom. So this is how to picture the 4 worlds, right? And the way that it works in general is that the first world, the highest of them all, which is fire, and it represents wands, that's the world of archetypes. The next tree that follows that is cups, and it's the creative world. The third world that follows that is swords, and stands for air. Of course, backtracking to what I just said, the creative world is, of course, cups, and of course, water. So formative world is swords, air, and then the final world, final tree is the material realm. And they have the name Atziluth for the archetypes, Bria for the creative world, Yetzirah for the formative world, and Asiya for the material world. Now, there's a way to break that down where it's just all on one tree. A lot of people say the archetypical world is the bubbles, right? The spheres, they're called the Sephirot, or Sephirot. Sephirot. I always fuck it up, because you know what? Us Americans fuck it up. We do. And we sound stupid when we say it, but it's Sephirot. Sephirot. Not Sephiroth, but Sephirot. Okay. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. So the world of archetypes, Atziluth. The creative world is Bria. The formative world is Yetzirah. And the material world, Asiya. And you could look at it as sort of like this. You build a fire, right? And then you put your cup on top of the fire, and it boils the water. And then the water becomes vaporous. And then when it reaches the ceiling, it turns into condensation. This is basically the process of the tree turned upside down. See, the first tree is about archetypes, pure, passionate creativity. It's everything locked into forms at the deepest level of your subconscious, where everything are like solid ideas. It's everything to pure volume 10. The next tree is the creative world. So you take your archetypes and then you turn them into creative, where it's like a mental process. And then formative is where you're actually putting it into position. And then the fourth tree is the material world, where it all comes into focus. Now, if that sounds cuckoo and not really making sense, I'm sorry. I'm explaining this the best I can. So now look at the tree of life just in front of you as a map. It's just one big tree. Now you understand there's 4 trees layered on top of each other, or you could pull them out and arrange them so one is on top, and then when you reach the 10th sphere, that becomes the number 1 of the next one, and it's like 4, like an accordion that you pull out, like whoop, right? Now, when you look at the tree of life, and you notice that there's triangles, essentially. The Sephirot, 1 through 3, there's a triangle. Then underneath, you realize there's an upside-down triangle, and then underneath another upside-down triangle, and then finally, you're left with Malkut, which is just a bubble hanging out by itself. So there's all this talk about division of the soul, explanation of that. So one of the ways that to pull it out in 4 is when you talk about the first 3 Sephirot represents the universal spirit. The 4, 5 to 6, which is the upside down pyramid, represents the soul. And then the next triangle underneath that represents the personality, and that would be 7, 8 to 9. And then underneath, you have that bubble just hanging out by itself. So understand that in the Kabbalistic terms, there's a universal spirit, right? And then what is seen as the soul is like when the part of spirit that breaks off and is you. It's you. It's like the individuality. Okay? And then the triangle underneath soul would be the personality. All right? And then finally, you get the bubble hanging out at the bottom, which is Malkut. And Malkut represents the gate, and it represents the physical senses. And you have to realize that, like, when you go up, the 9th Sephirot is the moon, that's number 9, and number 8 is Hod, which is Mercury, which is your mental thought processes, right? So it's basically Malkut. It's so inert. You have to realize that it's literally just your senses and the gate through which everything else is experienced. It's like a circle that you draw around yourself, and that's your position as a character avatar in like the video game that is life moving forward. It's a very dumbed down, what are you seeing out your eyes? What are you experiencing? What is everything before you start to analyze it? And what's teaching you is a big magic secret is that first you access the subconscious, which is always prevalent, and then the waking obviousness of the mental intellect, which is Sephirot number 8. So it's this thing of going the senses to the subconscious and then to mental intellect. So that's very important to like recognize, right? So Malkut is direct experience without any interpretation. It's when you start to expand your interpretation. First, you run it through your subconscious, which you aren't really necessarily in control of, and then it goes to your mental acuity, right? So that's just one thing I wanted to bring up. Now, let's see, check my notes. You talk about layers. Okay, so now you also get the number 4 represents itself once again, where you back off from this larger view, like I said, spirit, soul, personality, the gate. okay? And then you can recognize the tree as the soul itself and kind of like hone in on that, right? So there's 4 layers of the soul, supposedly. There's Neshama, Ruach, Nefesh, and Guf, or Huf, however it's pronounced. Neshima is the 1 through 3. Ruach is 4 to 8. Nefesh is just number 9, which is the moon. And Guf, or Huf, is number 10, which is Malkut. So understand that, like, the final one, Huf, it represents the animal instincts. The Nefesh is the astral etheric double of yourself. The Ruach is the mind and reasoning power. And then the Shema, the supernals, 1 through 3, are the highest aspirations. Okay, now that we got through all that, I don't know if that's going to make a lot of sense to you, but if you study the tarot, you probably realize what I'm talking about. But again, this number 4 repeats itself over and over and over in different ways and can be examined further. Another thing to know is that when you look at the Tree of Life as just one design, we're just pretending the 4 layers are all stacked there, where you just see one by itself. Each one of those bubbles, the Sephirot, they have a Tree of Life centered in it. So say, for instance, Sephirot number 5, Gebura, right? Stands for Mars, stands for your survival instincts and all that. Inside that bubble is its own Tree of Life. So there's a Keter to Gebura, there's a Binah to Gebura, there's a Hod, there's a Yesod, there's a Gebura to Gebura. There's all of the 10 Sephirot are reflected in each Sephirot. And then when you do that, like that, and then add all 4 worlds together, you end up with 400, which is the final number of the final card, which is the world, Tav. Numerical value 400. Okay, so again, we're going to move on now. And I just want to talk about the actual tarot cards in and of themselves and how they are the 22 Hebrew letters. And we're going to have a discussion about the 22 Hebrew letters. Now, if you're deep into tarot, this will make sense to you. As you know, the 22 trumps, if you choose to do tarot from a Kabbalistic perspective, which is almost, it's very widely practiced. A lot of people don't even realize they're doing it. But if you want to follow the Kabbalistic method, which is, what the Rider-Waite tarot cards are all about, you have to know what the 22 Hebrew letters are all about. And if you don't know, this is just a quick blah, 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 blah. Basically, the Hebrew alphabet are 22 keys of creation, or ways that the universe operates through mathematics. And each is an extreme creative principle. And basically, it was the hidden language of the Jewish folks. Each letter is a different creative principle of the universe. And each letter has its own mystical, magical significance to it and its whole point. And each letter has a number, and each letter has a hieroglyph or a symbol or an emoji, if you want to put it that way, that if you know what the emoji is, it blows up to the larger thing. But it's always done so in a misdirecting manner so that someone who isn't initiated into these secrets, they're never going to figure it out. So this is your cheat sheet, okay? Pay close attention to Dr. Zeero, okay? So when you arrange the trumps, there's 0 to 21, which is really 22, because you can't have a 0. But so the original list comes from Eliphas Levi, who made this assertion that the 22 trumps were the Hebrew letters, and he wrote a book that explain them in a very haphazard, out-of-line way that anyone reading it says, no, they should be constructed differently, which was another blind, which he probably most likely was intending to begin with. So everything got ironed out, is what I'm saying. And so what's the zero card, the Fool, is really number one of the Hebrew letters because there's no zero to it, right? So that's how we got to start. It's just like a negative to fool everybody, right? Everything has a blind. So we're going to initiate you right now. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Yakety smackety. So we start with the Fool card. Now, the symbol of the Fool card, the hieroglyph of it, is oxen, or an ox. And but what it really means is the philosophical element of air. The Jewish philosophical, not the actual real element of air, but philosophical air, right? It's different. And it means the breath, the spirit, the life force, right? And this is because they would be pushing their ox through the desert, and their oxen were their source of life, and they go where it went, and it became a symbol for that because it was, you had to stay with the livestock, when you're, living like that. So the ox represents breath, spirit, or air, right? And it's basically like when you look at the Fool card, it's like a moment when some thought comes into your head from nowhere, and the guy isn't looking to where he's going because this thought came in from nowhere. It just emerged from the air. It's emblematic of that, right? So now we jump to the Magician card. And what that stands for, the hieroglyph, is house. And it means like indwelling, right? So it's sort of like the parameters of where your consciousness rests. It's the parameters that houses your own consciousness. And when you bring everything back to a square one, sort of back to the drawing board, back to the workbench, everything is solidified. Number one, you're in your house, you're figuring it all out, you're at that first step. And what it means in a larger sense is the human willpower. That's the underlying message. Everything compacted to one point, back to the drawing board where the willpower is going to take you forever. So it's telling you the story of, the breath, the spirit, the air directly to the will. You know what I mean? When you talk about willpower is the source of magic, well, it's cutting right to it, So now the second card is the High Priestess, and that represents camel. It's a camel. And why? In today's day and age, we would probably put the hieroglyph of car. It's the thing that you drive through the desert. It's the thing that carries all your shit. It's the thing that takes you from this or this. If you look at the Tree of Life, it's also the direct conduit from the supernal triad up top that goes south and then leads you downwards. It's and it's the one that you're supposed to follow up on your ascent, traveling through Dot, or Dayat, however you want to say it, theoretically, as they say, but that's Zoharic stuff. But anyway, the camel, that represents your subconscious, right? And you'll see how these tarot cards keep building and building and building. So next up, we get the Empress, and she represents the door. But in the old days, they would say door leaf, which is, I'm pretty sure that's the thing that you knock. That's the thing that goes knock, knock, knock in order to go through. So it's the door that you pass in and out of. And it has a connotation to the womb, right? In a larger sense, womb of all kinds of things. But when you put it on the Tree of Life, it's the conduit between the male and female polarity in their strongest sense. It's the line of communication between the Adam and Eve principle, as they, some people look at it like. Anyway, next up you get the Emperor. And what the Emperor is all about is window. You gaze out your window, and what it means literally is sight. That's the human function. The sight. From your window, you have sight, but you're still within your house, basically. You know, these are slow baby steps to the point where you leave your comfortable zone. You keep moving forward. You see an evolution. So we go breath, will, subconscious, womb, and then into sight. Now, the Hierophant is special, and the hieroglyph is a nail, and that sounds odd, but means of union or intuition, means of intuition. And the word nail, the symbol nail, it means the word and. It's like being able to hook your thoughts together and construct dialogue and construct, you know. And it's when you talk about the evolution of these cards, it's like needs of necessity. You know, you've got your life breath, you have your dwelling, you have your ability to get around, you have the door which you come in and out of, you have the window that you peek out of with your sight, and now you have the ability to combine thoughts. And the combination of being able to combine thoughts is like the accelerating principle of magic, you know? It's crazy, crazy. So next up, we get card number 6, the Lovers. And it isn't necessarily about lovers. I mean, it kind of is, because what it represents, the hieroglyph, is the sword. And the sword cleaves, it cuts, it, you know, distinguishes things. And the human function that this is all about, really, that it's masking, it's the sense of smell, but more importantly, your sense of discrimination. It's like smelling out the bad people to get them away from them. That's why I say, like, your sense of smell, your sense of discrimination leads you to your lover, because you become in harmony with someone that is, like, with your principles and such. So that's what that's all about. And if you look at the card, it's actually the Archangel Raphael on the card. And there's deeper relevance to that as well, if you look into the biblical talk of it. Now, number 7, we get the Chariot. And the Chariot represents fence and field. Basically, like the parameters surrounding you and then the fence you put up. And when they mean by fence, they're not thinking of like a chain link fence like the cheap ones we have today. They're thinking like stone, like a stone wall that, like, when you see like the castles have those crazy stone walls everywhere, those were the stone fences. So it's thinking like stone fence, right? And for whatever reason, it represents your ability of speech. Because I guess speech moves forward your territory to a certain degree, and as well as you can speak, extends the boundaries of your territory to where your wall goes up. The wall only exists as far as your speech can define it. Now, finally, we get not finally, I'm going to keep going. But at number 8, we get the Snake, which is the woman holding the lion's mouth open, the Strength card. And this is all about taste and digestion from a human function, but also control of the serpent power. And we're talking about the astral light of Eliphas Levi and the cosmic electricity of Eliphas Levi, which means we're talking about Baphomet, bro. I wrote down the word Fohat, universal life principle, conscious energy, Fohat. I don't know what that means, but it's important, so I wrote it down. So you should remember that, Fohat. So it's about magical power. That's what the Strength card is. Extreme magical power. All right, so now moving on, we get the Hermit. And the Hermit, you'd be surprised to find maybe, it means the open hand, where you're opening yourself to anything and anything could relate. It's coming things with an open hand, and it relates to the human sense of touch, very specifically. And then you get to the Wheel of Fortune, the next card, and the Wheel of Fortune essentially means like a closed hand in the act of grasping of something, but it's the correct symbol for it, or hieroglyph, is the curve. That's why it's like it's something in an, like you spin the wheel of life. You spin the Wheel of Fortune. So you got open hand to closed hand. And what the Wheel of Fortune is all about is a sense of conciliation. It's where you compact everything you've ever learned and make it tight, and you take all the lessons you ever learned, and it's a mental principle where you're able to condition yourself. So the act of conciliation. Now, moving onward, and there's a larger thing here because you talk about Pythagorean number magic, right? 0 is nothingness with omnidirectional potential. And then you get 1 through 9, which is like the whole set. And when you get to 10 is sort of like 0 on repeating on another line, because you put the number 1 in front of it. It's like -1, just like the Roman numeral. But then you get to a number 11, and an 11, it's like it restarts. It's the magician on a higher arc. Does that make sense? Where the Wheel of Fortune is like the Fool on a higher arc. Does that make sense? So anyway, when we get to card number 11, Justice, it's represented by the ox goad, and the ox goad is like you have a boa staff with a sharp little pointer on the back of it, and you poke an ox in the butt to make it move. So it's the thing that's goading something on. It's the thing that's goading you on to keep moving beyond the conciliation, beyond having everything fucking tightly mannered. So the deeper thing here is work and action. Specifically, work and action. Now, number 12, the Hanged Man, is all about water, the philosophical element of water, and its hieroglyph is also water. So it's like water as water comes. Number 13 is the Death card, and what that represents, the hieroglyph, is fish. Of all things, it means fish, and it's fertility, change, to spend and grow, motion. Motion is the key fucking word of this. Now, the thing to know, this card was never called Death before the Rider-Waite deck. It was just the unnamed card, and it had a skeleton with a scythe on it, and it basically just meant the end of seasons. All right, that was the kind of idea behind it. And then, of course, Rider A.E. Waite threw the name Death on it and has changed our idea of it. But it's really a fertility card. It's like being a fish swimming upstream, ready to get it on, to just keep the life going. So number 14 is Temperance. And what that stands for is tent peg. And specifically, it represents a tent peg for the tabernacle, which is your portable altar. So it's like the deeper you go into wilderness, you make your portable altar in the middle of the wilderness, and that's the thing that holds it together. So the hidden thing going on here is it stands for specifically quivering or vibration. So it's like the vibes, bro. The vibes about everything. Anyway, so this leads us to number 15, which is the Devil card. So the Devil card is about the eye in a physical sense, and specifically about foundations. But it represents your eyesight in the physical world, as opposed to the Emperor, which was more like spiritual sight. This one's your physical sight. So this is like that's the material thing of it. And the larger thing is mirth, playfulness. You know, sex isn't looked at as an awful thing in Judaism. You know, playtime. You know, and really the message of the card, if you look closely, the people in the Devil card, they have really loose chains around their necks. They walked up to that thing and hitched themselves to it, and they're there because they want to be. So number 16, the Tower, which everybody fears, it's the mouth, but as the organ of speech. So it's like the power of the word. And it means great activity, sudden force, all that stuff. So it's your power, it's your ability to blow apart towers with your words, man. 17, the Star, That's represented by fish hook. And it kind of means the harvest a little bit, but it specifically means like meditation and your ability to like fish stuff out of your subconscious. The moon card is all about the back of the head, which represents sleep and all things subconscious. The sun card is about the head and the face, which is about the collective intelligence that you possess and your reason and being headstrong and being right there. When you talk about the judgment card, it represents a tooth, because it's sharp as fuck. The larger thing is the perpetual intelligence just beyond you, and it stands for the fire, philosophical element of fire, and the purifying fire, because you are purifying yourself under the intensity of Gabriel's trumpet. And then finally you reach the world. And the world means your signature or mark upon the great work. It's your personal sigil. Your personal sigil is the world card. The sigil that you put on top of everything you've ever done, every action, everything you ever thought. That's what that motherfucker is. And it's called the administrative intelligence. Consciousness of active participation in the cosmic government. So when you stepped up and you're in full control and you are more responsible than you've ever been. Because tarot teaches responsibility. That's what all this shit's about. Not only learning all your powers, but being responsible for them. With great power comes great responsibility, and you don't have to fucking be Spider-Man. You just are who you are. And everybody brings their own skill sets. So, I think I've had you long enough. Thanks for stopping by the Dr. Zeero Xiron Free Magic Secrets Show. I do hope this all helped. And as always, here's one hot rockin' outro just for you. All right, later, kids.